There is a setting hiding inside your Samsung Galaxy right now that you never agreed to in the way you think you did. It switched itself on the moment you signed into your Samsung account, and it has been quietly profiling your location, your browsing, your contacts, and your photos ever since. You didn't get a warning screen. You didn't get a clear choice. And here's the part almost nobody talks about. Even if you find it and turn it off, the next software update might secretly turn it back on. This is in a settings list. This is what your phone has been hiding from you. Somewhere inside the maze of menus on your Galaxy phone, there's a single toggle that knows more about you than most of your closest friends do. It knows where you sleep, it knows where you work, it knows what you searched for at 2 in the morning when you thought nobody was watching. And the strange part is, you probably switched it on yourself without ever realizing you did it, the moment you created a Samsung account and tapped continue without reading what came next. This is not a story about a virus. It's not a story about a hacker in a hoodie breaking into your device from the other side of the world. This is something far quieter and in some ways far more unsettling. Because the thing collecting your data isn't an intruder. It's the manufacturer of the phone in your hand. According to reporting from multiple tech investigators earlier this year, the setting in question is called Customization Service, and it is buried so deep in the privacy menu, written in language so soft and harmless, that most people scroll right past it without a second thought. Read that again. A setting with a name that sounds like it's there to help you, to customize your experience, is, according to that same reporting, functioning more like a built-in advertising tracker than a convenience feature. It doesn't ask you in a separate, clearly labeled prompt. It activates automatically the moment your Samsung account is created. No pop-up demanding your attention, no flashing warning, just silence, and in that silence, the collecting begins. So what exactly is it collecting? This is where it gets uncomfortable. Investigators who dug into this setting found that it has access to your precise location history, not just a rough idea of which city you're in, but the specific paths you walk every day. It pulls your full browsing and search activity, the things you type into search bars at your most private, unfiltered moments. It reaches into your calendar, your contact list, your call logs, and a list of every app you've ever installed. And then it goes further still. It can read the metadata buried inside your photos, the exact time and exact location each picture was taken, a quiet timestamp of your entire life, even for photos you never intended to share with anyone. Think about what that means. Every photo you've taken since setting up that account potentially carries a hidden log of where you were and when. Stack that next to your location history, your search history, and your contact list, and what you end up with isn't a privacy setting at all. It's a profile. A detailed, constantly updating sketch of who you are, who you know, where you go, and what you're curious about, built without you ever signing a single consent form that clearly told you this is what was happening. And here's where it gets worse. This isn't a one-time data grab that happened once and then stopped. It runs continuously in the background, whether you ever open the settings menu or not. Most people will go their entire ownership of the phone without ever stumbling onto this toggle because it isn't placed somewhere obvious like privacy with a giant warning label. It's tucked under Samsung account settings, inside privacy and security, wrapped in vague wording that makes it sound like a simple preference. Something about improving your experience. Something about tailored content. Nothing in the phrasing tells you the truth of what's actually happening underneath. But the story doesn't end with finding it and switching it off. This is the part that should genuinely concern you. According to reporting published in January of this year, One UI software updates have, on more than one occasion, quietly re-enabled settings that users had specifically turned off. Picture that for a second. You do the responsible thing. You find the toggle. You read about what it does. You turn it off, satisfied that you've taken back control. Then, months later, a routine software update rolls in, promising new features and bug fixes, and somewhere in that update, the very setting you disabled flips itself back on. Without an alert, without asking permission, without telling you it happened at all. This is not chaos. This is a system that has been designed, intentionally or not, to make privacy a constant, repeated act of vigilance rather than a single decision you get to make once. And that single fact changes everything about how you should treat your phone's settings menu. It's no longer something you fix once and forget. It's something you now have to check again and again after every meaningful update, because the system itself has shown a pattern of quietly reverting your choices behind your back. Customization Service isn't traveling alone either. Sitting right next to it, in that same privacy section, is a separate toggle for sending diagnostic data back to Samsung. It sounds technical, almost boring, like something only engineers would care about, but it is, in effect, a second open channel feeding information about your device's behavior and usage patterns outward, and it requires its own deliberate opt-out, a process that takes barely 30 seconds, but that almost nobody bothers to complete because almost nobody knows it exists in the first place. Now think about what's happening at the same time on the artificial intelligence side of your phone. Galaxy AI, the suite of features Samsung has been pushing hard into nearly every corner of recent One UI versions, doesn't always process your requests locally on the device sitting in your pocket. Depending on the feature, some of that processing can happen in the cloud, on servers outside your control, depending on what you're asking it to do. According to tech reporting from earlier this year, there is a setting that lets you restrict Galaxy AI to process data only on the device itself, cutting off that outward flow entirely for supported features. But like almost everything else on this list, it isn't switched on by default. You have to go looking for it. And here's the unsettling pattern repeating itself. Neither this AI processing setting nor the diagnostic data toggle announces itself. Both quietly exist in the background, functioning exactly as designed, whether you ever open that menu or not. So let's pause here and ask the question nobody seems to be asking loudly enough. How many of these settings, stacked one on top of another, exist purely because almost no one ever finds them? Because if a setting requires you to wade through 3 or 4 submenus, decode vague corporate language, and somehow already know what you're looking for before you go looking, is that really a choice you're being given? Or is it a defense Samsung can point to later, technically present, practically invisible? But location, search history, and AI processing are only one layer of this. There's another battlefield happening on your phone that has nothing to do with advertising profiles and everything to do with something far more physical. Who can see what's on your screen without ever unlocking it? Here's where the story shifts. On current Galaxy devices, full notification content frequently displays right there on the lock screen by default. The actual text of a message, the subject of an email, the contents of an alert, all visible to anyone who glances at your phone while it's sitting on a table, in your pocket, or in someone else's hand for even a few seconds. Think about what that actually exposes. A two-factor authentication code arriving by text, a private message from a partner, a work email with details you never meant for a stranger at a coffee shop to read over your shoulder. All of it sitting there in plain view. No fingerprint or password required, just a glance. And this is where everything changes in terms of how seriously you should take this. Samsung has, to its credit, built a genuinely clever countermeasure for exactly this kind of exposure. It's a feature appearing on the newest Galaxy flagships called Privacy Display. And according to discussion among Samsung's own user community earlier this year, it works by dimming, not fully blacking out, but significantly dimming, your screen content the moment the system detects someone other than you might be looking at it based on viewing angle. It's still an early generation feature, and it doesn't yet deliver the dramatic total blackout you might see exaggerated in online demo videos, but it represents Samsung quietly acknowledging a problem most users never consciously thought to worry about: the simple act of someone else's eyes landing on your unlocked screen. The deeper issue, though, is that a feature like this only protects you if you know to look for it, know to enable it, and know to pair it with the right settings. Most people never will. Most people will keep walking around with full message previews lighting up their lock screen in any public space, completely unaware that a setting exists to change that, because, once again, it isn't loud. It isn't forced on you during setup. It's optional, buried, and silent. Now here's a contrast worth sitting with for a moment, because this story isn't only about features working against you. Some of what's hiding in these menus is genuinely working for you, and ignoring that would be its own kind of dishonesty. Autoblocker, a security layer introduced a couple of years ago and still active in current One UI versions, blocks installation of apps from unauthorized, unofficial sources, prevents malicious commands from being sent through a USB cable while your phone is locked, and screens images sent through messaging apps for malware before they ever fully load. According to Samsung's own documentation, this is one of the more meaningful security additions in recent memory. And the advice from people who study these systems closely is consistent. Leave it on. Don't touch it. It's quietly doing its job, and turning it off in the name of decluttering your settings would be removing one of the few genuinely protective walls standing between you and a deliberate attack. Sitting alongside AutoBlocker is Theft Detection Lock, a feature using on-device motion pattern recognition to identify the specific physical motion of someone grabbing your phone and running, the kind of sudden jerking snatch that happens on a crowded street or a subway platform, and locking the screen instantly in response, before the thief even has a chance to glance at what's on it. This is the kind of feature that sounds almost too specific to be real, until you realize how common phone snatching actually is in dense urban environments worldwide, and how little time a victim has to react once it happens. Again, leave this on. This is not a setting fighting against you. This is a setting fighting for you. So if some of these settings are protecting you and others are quietly exposing you, the real skill here isn't blind paranoia that tells you to switch everything off. It's knowing which is which. And that distinction matters more than ever once you step into the next layer of this story, the one hiding inside your battery. Here's a number that should stop you mid-scroll. One detailed investigation into Galaxy battery behavior earlier this year found a messaging app that had logged barely 3 minutes of actual screen on time in a day, yet had remained quietly active in the background for over 2 hours. 2 hours of background activity generated by an app the user had barely touched. A separate browser app showed nearly 18% of total battery consumption despite less than 10 minutes of active use, with several of those minutes burned simply running in the background where the user could neither see it nor stop it without specifically going looking. Think about what that means for the phone sitting in your pocket right now. You assume your phone is resting when the screen is off. You assume nothing meaningful is happening while it sits there, dark and silent on your nightstand overnight. But underneath that black screen, your phone may be far more awake than you realize, syncing, refreshing, pinging servers, waking itself up over and over throughout the night for apps you barely open during the day. Social platforms, shopping apps, news aggregators, many of them designed from the ground up to constantly sync data and push notifications, whether or not you've actually engaged with them, quietly draining your battery hour after hour while you sleep. And this is where the situation escalates again, because background drain isn't only a battery story. Every one of those background wake-ups is also a data event, a small ping, a small sync, a small transmission, happening without your direct awareness or consent in the moment. The same apps quietly burning your battery overnight are very often the same apps quietly building behavioral profiles of you in parallel, learning your patterns, your habits, your rhythms, all while your phone sits there looking to you, completely idle. The fix exists, but once again, it isn't loud, and it isn't automatic for every app. One UI does include background usage limits that let you assign specific apps to a sleeping or deep sleeping state, restricting how much they can do without your permission while you're not actively using them. Adaptive Battery, when properly enabled, learns your real usage patterns over time and starts limiting power to the apps you barely touch. But here's the catch that almost nobody mentions. This learning process resets, partially, after every major software update, meaning the very system meant to protect your battery has to relearn your habits from scratch each time Samsung pushes a significant new version of One UI, leaving a window, sometimes lasting days, where your battery behaves unpredictably and your background restrictions may not be fully applied yet. Layer onto that the always-on display feature, which keeps a portion of your screen continuously lit even while the phone is supposedly off and sitting untouched. You start to see the full shape of what's actually happening. Every pixel kept alive around the clock is a pixel quietly pulling from your battery every minute of the day, whether you ever glance at the time or not. It's a feature people love for its convenience and almost never connect to the slow, steady drain happening underneath it. There's also nearby device scanning, a feature continuously searching the air around you for connectable Samsung devices. Earbuds, watches, other phones, running constantly in the background, regardless of whether you actually own any of those accessories. If you don't use Galaxy Buds or a Galaxy Watch, this feature is, for you, pure overhead. Constant scanning, constant battery cost, for a connection you will never make. And like nearly everything else in this story, it ships active by default, asking nothing of you before it starts running. Now step back and look at the full shape of what we've uncovered. A data profiling tool disguised as a customization feature, activating itself the moment you sign in. A diagnostic data channel sitting quietly beside it, requiring its own separate opt-out. An AI system that may process pieces of your personal requests outside the device unless you specifically restrict it. A lock screen exposing the actual content of your private messages to anyone glancing your way. Settings that, according to credible reporting, have been known to silently revert themselves after software updates, undoing the very protections you thought you'd already secured. And underneath all of it, a battery being quietly drained and your behavior quietly logged by background processes you never explicitly approved and were never clearly shown. But here's the real twist buried at the center of all this, the one that should genuinely unsettle you more than any single setting on this entire list. The problem was never really about technology being too complicated for ordinary people to understand. The problem is that these systems were built layer by layer in a way that makes the protective choice the difficult one to find, and the default choice the one that quietly serves the company collecting your data. Every toggle we've walked through today exists. None of it is secret in the sense of being illegal or hidden from regulators. It's all sitting right there in your settings menu, in plain sight, technically disclosed. And yet almost nobody finds it, because finding it was never made to be easy. This is where the real authority piece of this story matters most. What most people are not seeing is that privacy settings on a modern smartphone are no longer a single switch you flip once during setup and then forget about forever. They are a moving target. A set of defaults that can be reset by an update you didn't ask for, controlled by toggles tucked under vague names you'd never think to search for. spread across menus designed by people who understand exactly how unlikely you are to go digging through every submenu on a device you use 40 times a day without ever truly exploring. So where does that leave you, the person holding this phone, reading this right now? It leaves you with a short list of real, concrete actions, the kind that take a few minutes total, but close the most significant gaps. Find customization service under your Samsung account's privacy and security settings, and switch it off. Locate the diagnostic data toggle nested under additional privacy settings, and close that channel too. If Galaxy AI matters to you, decide deliberately whether you want certain requests processed only on the device, rather than leaving that choice unmade by default. Check your lock screen notification settings and consider hiding message content from view until the phone is actually unlocked. Leave AutoBlocker and Theft Detection Lock exactly as they are, because those two are quietly protecting you, not exploiting you. And critically, mark your calendar, mentally or literally, to recheck every one of these settings after any major One UI update, because the evidence so far suggests you cannot simply trust that your previous choices will still be respected once the update finishes installing. And still, even after doing all of that, a harder question remains, one that no settings menu can fully answer. If a setting can be quietly turned back on without your knowledge once, what guarantees do you actually have that it won't happen again with the next update, or the one after that? If the most invasive data collection on your device is hidden behind language soft enough to sound helpful, what other settings, ones we haven't even uncovered yet, might be sitting in that same menu right now, waiting for the next investigation to expose them? Samsung will keep pushing new One UI versions, keep expanding Galaxy AI deeper into the operating system, keep adding new conveniences wrapped in new vague names, and every single time, the burden will fall back onto you to go looking, to read carefully, to question the soft language, because nothing in this story suggests that burden is going away on its own. So the next time your phone buzzes with a software update notification, and that easy install button appears, asking for nothing more than a tap and a few minutes of patience, ask yourself a different question than the one you usually ask. Not what new features am I getting, but what old protections am I quietly about to lose?